Hallie headed across the desert for Building 3 of Outer Heaven, determined to let nothing stand in his way. He had to rescue Dr. Petrovich and his daughter and destroy Metal Gear before the evil weapon could be put to use against the nations of democracy. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Katafi was asking for it now. There were trucks parked in front of the building's side entrance, but a few mines took them out. Within seconds, he was in the building and using keycard 7 to get the elevator working. On the second floor, the rooms were opened by keycard 5. Solid Snake let himself into one of the rooms and saw nothing. The room appeared to be entirely empty. And yet, Hallie felt a prickle along his skin. His trained instincts were telling him that something was here, something of vital importance. He went to the far wall and ran his fingers along the rough stone. It felt solid, looked solid, and yet the tips of Solid Snake's fingers touched a line, running like a crack in the stone from the ceiling to the floor. He pressed hard, harder. The crack widened and a secret compartment in the wall opened up. A figure was stuffed into the secret compartment, which was barely large enough to hold it. It was a girl, bound and gagged and unconscious. Solid Snake took the choking gag off and revived the girl gently. But when she saw the terrorist uniform that Hallie was wearing, she began to scream. The poor girl was obviously terrified. "Shh, all right," and Hallie put her hand firmly back over her mouth. "I'm not one of Katafi's men. I'm Captain Hallie of the Snake Men Squad. I'll take my hand away if you promise not to scream, okay?" The girl nodded and mumbled something. Carefully, Solid Snake took his hand away. "Are you all right?" he asked in a low voice. The girl nodded through tears. "I'm okay," she whispered back. "Are you Ellen, Dr. Petrovich's daughter?" "Yes, I am. Have you found my father?" The girl cried eagerly. "Not yet, but soon, I promise. Both of you will go home safely." Solid Snake looked at her face carefully. She looked tired and probably hungry, but she didn't seem to have been hurt. "Look, I'm going to untie you now and take you somewhere to hide. I think you'll be safe until I come back for you. Try to hang in there and be brave." "I'll try, but I'm worried about my father," said the girl urgently. "Not as worried as I am," said Solid Snake to himself. "I'm going to get word to him that you're alive, so don't worry anymore. Stay as quiet as you can and leave everything to me. I'll see to it that both of you get out of here safe and sound. Now put your arm around my neck and lean on me. You're a brave girl, Ellen. I'm taking you out of here." Hallie left the girl in another room, making a mental note of which door she was behind. Then he set off down the corridor. He was convinced that both Dr. Petrovich and Metal Gear were somewhere here in Building 3. Was there a basement in this building? He should check that out without delay. Neither the east nor the west elevator had a button for the basement, but that meant there could be stairs hidden somewhere. If only he could find them. Maybe he could get some advice from the Colonel. He spun the tuning dial on the radio. "Solid Snake? Solid Snake? Boss Man here!" It was Diana, transmitting on the frequency assigned to her by Commander South. Justin heard the faint radio signal, and he recognized Diana's voice. But he paid no attention to the transmission. Hallie realized now that Diana's signals had been misleading him all along, and that Jennifer was really his control, a true freedom fighter. The only thing Solid Snake didn't know was how much damage Diana might have already done. Solid Snake found himself facing 3 doors. At first he decided on the left-hand room, but as he approached it, all his instincts triggered a warning. "Don't go in there." He changed his mind for the right-hand door instead, and keycard 7 opened it. Hallie expected to find a small room, but instead the door opened into a vast, well-lit area with locked doors running along the sides of the 4 walls. Suddenly from his transceiver came Jennifer's voice. "Be careful not to kill him. He's my brother. If anything happens to my brother, I can't help you anymore." Her brother? Jennifer had a brother here in outer heaven? But why was she mentioning it now? The room seemed empty. Hallie turned to the first locked door on his left. Using keycard 7, Solid Snake opened the door. 3 Snake Men prisoners were inside, in a tiny room. The man in the middle was sitting bound but not gagged. That man was Bob O'Reilly, Eagle Man, Justin Hallie's best friend in the Snake Men squad. When he saw his friend, Solid Snake broke into a wide grin and started toward him, but Eagle Man cried out to him in an agonized voice. "No, Solid Snake! Don't take another step toward me! I've been booby-trapped, rigged up to plastic explosives. I don't know where the detonator is. We'll all be blown sky-high if you laid a finger on me. Listen to me, Justin. I'm Jennifer's brother. My life is not important. Only the destruction of Metal Gear is important. You're very close now. How many keycards do you have?" 7, answered Hallie. "Good. There are 8 keycards, so you only need 1 more. Metal Gear is hidden in the basement of this building, and Dr. Petrovich is a prisoner there. It's very near to completion. And when it's complete, it will detonate a series of catastrophic explosions all over the free world. You must get a hold of keycard 8. It's the only card that will unlock the basement location. Every second is precious. Go! Go now!" "Bob, I can't leave you here like this," Solid Snake protested. "You don't have a choice, Justin," replied Eagle Man softly. "You'd better hurry." There was nothing for Solid Snake to do but obey, to leave Jennifer's brother, his best friend, tied up and booby-trapped. Justin left the room, but he didn't get far. The vital minutes were counting down, but Hallie could not leave Eagle Man and the other 2 Snake Men to die. It was an impossible decision for him to make. He turned back. As Hallie came back to the room, he realized that already Katafi's evil was at work. He smelled poison gas. The Snake Men were going to die. Putting his gas mask on, Solid Snake ran into the room and freed the 2 Snake Men on either side of Eagle Man, dragging them out. They were barely breathing, but still alive. Now for Eagle Man. But how to get him out of the poison gas when he was booby-trapped with explosives? In the doorway, Solid Snake watched in horror as Jennifer's brother's eyes shut and his head fell forward on his chest. The poison gas was beginning to work. The weight of Eagle Man's sagging body pulled his chair over with him. Instinctively, Captain Hallie braced himself against the imminent explosion of the booby trap. But there was no explosion. As Eagle Man had slumped forward, the fall had pulled a wire loose from the trap. The chair had disconnected the detonator. Instantly, Solid Snake seized Eagle Man and half-dragged, half-carried his friend out of the gas-filled room. He tried CPR, breathing fresh air down into Eagle Man's lungs, but his friend didn't respond. It looked as though Solid Snake Men were dead. But Hallie wouldn't give up hope. Remembering the little bottle of antidote, he poured some of the liquid down his friend's throat, and in less than a minute, he heard choking and gagging that told him Eagle Man was alive. In jubilation, Solid Snake pounded Jennifer's brother happily on the back, and then he made a discovery. Pinned to the back of Eagle Man's uniform, in a mocking gesture of Colonel Katafi's, was keycard 8, the last card, the one that Katafi had never expected anybody to find. He had thought it would be destroyed when the booby trap exploded. Hallie now had the final keycard to Metal Gear. Although he held all 8 key cards and the clue from Eagle Man that Metal Gear was in the basement, Hally still didn't know exactly where to find Metal Gear. He only knew that the basement would be the most heavily guarded place in all of Outer Heaven. And first, he would have to find the stairs that led to the basement. None of the elevators were programmed to go there. If only he had more time. Justin Hally was slowed down by the equipment he was carrying, but he was afraid to leave any of it behind. Not knowing what he'd be up against, he didn't know which weapons would be most effective. Did he really need all 8 of his key cards? Eagle Man said that the 8th one was the key to Metal Gear. Maybe he ought to think of leaving the other 7 behind, so they wouldn't have to waste even a moment looking for key card 8. Looking to separate key card 8 out from the rest, Solid Snake shuffled through the key cards in his hand, and as he did so, he noticed something for the first time. Something most unusual. On the backs of the key cards were printed different pieces of the same design, like a puzzle. It actually was a puzzle. And when Hally laid the key cards out together in a certain way, he saw the design for the first time. It was the same insignia that was all over the compound, painted on the sides of the trucks, the badge on the enemy uniform that Solid Snake himself was wearing. A grinning, fanged reptile entwined around a twisted, broken tree. The insignia in itself didn't surprise Justin Hally. But there was something more. With all the cards laid out, he noticed for the first time that the design actually incorporated a map of Outer Heaven. There, in the coils of the snake, were the different buildings and levels he'd gone through. He could make out the heat panels, and the underwater tunnel, and the desert with the train killer scorpions. And there, in the very center of Solid Snake's eye, was a very small star. Solid Snake knew at once that the star represented the weapon, Metal Gear. The rest of the map showed him exactly where in the basement to find it, and where the stairs must be leading to the basement. Committing the map to memory, Hally went in search of the stairway. According to the map, the stairway ought to be very near one of the pillars that held up the ceiling of the first level. Swiftly, Hally made his way to the pillar, but saw nothing. No sign of any stairway around it. Yet, Solid Snake was certain that he was in the right place. A sudden burst of gunfire chattered angrily past his head. Captain Hally dove for cover. There wasn't any cover, only the presence of the pillar, which he hugged with his body. It wasn't much protection, but it was all there was. The situation looked hopeless. He was right there out in the open, in the middle of a firefight, and he couldn't even see the terrorists. They were protected, shooting at him from their hiding places. All he could do was stay close to the pillar. What? Solid Snake touched something. It felt like a lock, down low in the base of the pillar. A lock? That was it! The stairway wasn't near the pillar, it was inside the pillar! Keycard 8. He only had seconds to find it. Why hadn't he thrown the other keycards away? At last, keycard 8 was in Hally's hand. Fitting it into the slot, Hally looked up to see 4 guards breaking cover, racing at him with his assault rifles. There wasn't a second to spare. Would keycard 8 do the trick? A click. The side of the pillar opened like a narrow door. Solid Snake, grabbing up his gear, threw himself headlong into the opening and slammed the door behind him. He found himself falling into total darkness.